Imagine walking into a bar, putting the deed to your house on the table, and trading it for a single flower. It sounds like a joke, but in 1637 in the Netherlands, this was reality. At the height of the madness, one bulb of the Semper Augustus tulip was sold for 10,000 guilders. To put that in perspective, for that price, you could buy a grand mansion on the most expensive canal in Amsterdam. Or you could buy enough wheat to feed a city, 1,200 sheep, and 4 tons of butter, all for one plant that would die in a week. This was Tulip Mania. History calls it the first major financial bubble, but it wasn't just about greed, it was about beauty, biology, and a strange virus that drove an entire nation insane. How did the most rational people in Europe lose their minds over a garden weed? To understand the crash, we first have to look at the cash. In the 1630s, the Dutch Republic was the richest nation on earth. They were the masters of global trade. Their ships sailed to India, Indonesia, and the Americas, bringing back spices, silk, and gold. Amsterdam was the center of the world. Money was flooding into the city. Merchants were becoming richer than kings. And when you have too much money, you need something to spend it on. You need status symbols. They built grand estates and filled them with art, but paintings were common. Everyone had a Rembrandt. They wanted something rarer, something exotic. And then a mysterious flower arrived from the court of the Ottoman Sultan in Turkey. The tulip wasn't native to Europe. It grew wild in the mountains of Central Asia. The sultans of the Ottoman Empire considered it a divine symbol. To give a tulip was a sign of ultimate respect. It arrived in Holland thanks to a botanist named Carolus Clusius. In 1593, he planted the first bulbs in the University of Leiden's garden. He intended to study them for science, but the locals had other ideas. The flower was so strikingly different from anything in Europe, with its intense, saturated colors, that people became obsessed instantly. One night, thieves broke into Clusius's garden and stole his entire collection. The tulip had escaped the lab. It was now on the black market. But here is the twist. Most tulips were just solid red or yellow. They were cheap. The ones that sold for millions were different. They had flames of white or yellow streaking through the petals. These broken patterns made them look like marble or gold. The Dutch didn't know it at the time, but this beauty was caused by a sickness, a mosaic virus carried by aphids. The most expensive flowers in the world were actually dying. By 1634, the obsession spread from the rich to the middle class. Suddenly, it wasn't just wealthy merchants. Carpenters, weavers, blacksmiths, and chimney sweeps, everyone wanted in. The tulip market became the world's first casino. But there was a problem. Tulips only bloom in April and May. You can only dig up the bulbs in late summer. For the rest of the year, the bulbs are buried underground. You can't see them. You can't touch them. So how do you trade them in December? The Dutch invented something revolutionary, the futures market. They stopped trading the physical bulbs. They started trading pieces of paper, contracts promising to deliver a bulb 6 months later. They called it windhandel, the wind trade. Because there was no official stock exchange for flowers, the trading happened in the back rooms of local taverns and inns. They called these secret clubs colleges. Imagine a room filled with smoke, cheap beer, and insane amounts of money. The rules were simple. Buyers and sellers negotiated using slate boards to keep bids secret. When a deal was struck, they toasted with wine. The seller paid a wine money fee. It was a party, and everyone was getting rich. A bulb could change hands 10 times in a single day without ever leaving the ground. The price went up every single time. You could buy a contract for 50 guilders at breakfast and sell it for 100 at dinner. It was free money. By the winter of 1636, the mania reached its peak. The price of rare bulbs exploded. One viceroy bulb was sold for 2 lasts of wheat, 4 lasts of rye, 4 fat oxen,
8 fat swine, 12 fat sheep, 2 hogsheads of wine, 4 tons of beer, 2 tons of butter, 1,000 pounds of cheese, a bed, a suit of clothes, and a silver drinking cup. Total value, 2,500 guilders, all for one single bulb. People were selling their family businesses, they were taking loans. Foreigners were arriving in Amsterdam just to get in on the action. It seemed like the prices could only go up. The sky was the limit. But in any bubble, there is always a greater fool. The idea that you can buy something expensive today because there will always be a greater fool willing to pay even more tomorrow, until you run out of fools.
The madness was so high that people lost touch with reality. There's a famous story of a sailor who docked in Amsterdam. He saw a merchant's Semper Augustus bulb sitting on a counter. To the sailor, it just looked like an onion. Thinking it would go well with his herring, he took it, sliced it up, and ate it for breakfast. He didn't know he was eating a flower worth more than the entire ship he sailed on. When the merchant found him, the sailor was finishing the last bite. The merchant dragged him to the magistrate. The sailor was thrown in jail for months. It was the most expensive meal in history. But it was a sign. The value was imaginary. To the uneducated eye, a treasure was just a vegetable. Then came February 3rd, 1637. In the city of Haarlem, a routine auction began. The auctioneers stood up to sell a batch of bulbs. Usually, buyers would be screaming their bids within seconds, but this time, silence. No one bid. The auctioneer lowered the price. Still, silence. He lowered it again. Nothing. A cold panic swept through the room. People looked at each other and realized the same terrifying truth at the exact same moment. This is just a flower. It wasn't gold, it wasn't land, it was a perishable plant. Within hours, the panic spread from Haarlem to Amsterdam to the rest of the country. Everyone wanted to sell. Nobody wanted to buy. Prices didn't just fall, they evaporated. Bulbs that were worth 5,000 guilders in the morning were worthless by the evening. The contracts, the wind trade, became exactly what they were named, just wind. Dealers went bankrupt overnight. People refused to honor their contracts. They said, "I agreed to buy a bulb, not a piece of worthless trash." The courts were flooded with thousands of lawsuits. The government didn't know what to do. They eventually declared that the debts could be canceled for a small 3.5% fee. But for many, it was too late. The wealth was gone. The dream was over. Contrary to popular legend, the Dutch economy didn't collapse completely. The ships kept sailing. The factories kept producing. The cheese kept aging. The only thing that vanished was the imaginary wealth of the speculators. The tulip itself remained. Once the hysteria ended, people remembered why they liked the flower in the first place. Not because it was an investment vehicle, but because it was beautiful. The price returned to reality, the cost of a garden flower. So, was this just a bizarre event from the past? A stupid mistake by people in funny hats? No. Tulip Mania was the first time human psychology met the free market. And human psychology never changes. We see the same pattern in every century. The South Sea bubble, the dot-com crash, the housing crisis. The asset changes, but the emotion is always the same. FOMO, the fear of missing out. Today, we don't trade bulbs, we trade digital tokens. In 2021, people were buying JPEGs of rocks and cartoon monkeys for millions of dollars. They said, "It's different this time, it's the new economy." But the Dutch said the exact same thing in 1637. The lesson of the tulip is simple. Value is not price. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. If you are investing because you believe in the utility, you are an investor. If you are investing because you think a greater fool will pay you more tomorrow, you are just a tulip trader. And eventually, in every mania, the music stops, the winter comes, and all you are left with is a wilting flower. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments, what is the tulip of our generation? Don't forget to subscribe for more history of money.